In this video, we are going to talk about the circulatory system. The circulatory system is an organ system that forms a network. It comprises of a circulating fluid, a pumping organ, and some associated structures. On the basis of the presence of these three components, the circulatory system is differentiated or categorized into two types: the open circulatory system and the closed circulatory system. The open circulatory system is a system in which the organs or the internal structures are completely bathed in the circulating fluid or the blood. It is seen in lower organisms like cockroach, whereas closed circulatory system is seen in higher organisms like mammals, in which the circulating fluid flows in confined blood vessels. Blood vessels are specialized structures that are meant to transport blood from one place to another inside body. This component of circulatory system is clearly visible in the vertebrates. In vertebrates, there are 5 groups, and from the evolutionary point of view, we must understand that the heart or the circulating structures that are formed are complete as well as incomplete in these groups. The incomplete circulatory structures or heart is found in lower groups of vertebrates like pisces, amphibia, and reptilia, whereas in certain reptilia like crocodile, aves, and mammals, the heart or the circulatory system is complete and well defined. The pisces have 2-chambered heart, whereas the reptilia and amphibians have 3-chambered heart. Crocodile, which comes under the group reptilia, along with aves and mammals, have 4-chambered heart. So now let's talk about the human circulatory system. The human circulatory system comprises of blood as the circulating fluid, the pumping organ known as heart, and the blood vessels that are arteries, veins, and capillaries. Let's talk about blood. Blood is a circulating fluid that's dark red in color. Blood is largely composed of plasma and certain blood cells. Plasma consists of 55% of the blood, whereas the blood cells or the blood corpuscles comprises of 45% of the blood. In the blood cells, there are erythrocytes or the RBCs, leukocytes, the WBCs, and the thrombocytes known as platelets. The RBCs, WBCs, and platelet together comprises to form the blood corpuscles, whereas the plasma is the watery serum that is present inside the blood that is responsible for carrying protein, fibrin, etc. Now let's talk about the human heart. The human heart is a muscular organ that is solely responsible for pumping of blood. Picture of human heart. There are 4 chambers, 2 upper chambers known as atria and the 2 lower chambers known as ventricles, which are bifurcated into the right and the left atrium. Similarly, the ventricles are also bifurcated or divided into 2 chambers known as the right and the left ventricles. In the process of circulation of blood throughout the body, the deoxygenated blood reaches into the right atrium through the vena cava. Vena cava are large blood vessels that are responsible for bringing deoxygenated bloods from the upper regions of the human body and from the lower extremities of the human body, which are known as superior vena cava and the inferior vena cava respectively. When the deoxygenated blood enters into the right atrium, it builds a pressure on the valves that are present between the atria and the ventricle of the right side. The tricuspid valve that is present between the right atrium and the right ventricle opens, allowing the flow of blood and fills in the right ventricle. Upon experience a systolic contraction, the blood in the ventricle rushes through the pulmonary artery into the lungs, where the blood gets oxygenated. When the blood gets oxygenated in the lungs, it comes back towards the heart, precisely towards the left auricle through blood vessels known as pulmonary vein. When the oxygenated blood enters into the left atrium, the bicuspid valve, also known as mitral valve, that is present between the left auricle and the left ventricle, opens and the blood is filled in the left ventricle. When the left ventricle is filled more than 70%, a strong systolic pressure is experienced that pushes the blood out of the heart through the aorta. The aorta is the largest and the strongest blood vessel of the human heart that experiences a lot of pressure during the process of pumping of blood. Also, the chambers of the atria and the ventricles never mixes the impure and the pure blood because of septum present between them. The two auricles are divided by interauricular septa, whereas the ventricles are divided by interventricular septum. Also, the auricle and the ventricle are divided by the valves and the auriculoventricular septum. There is semilunar valves that are guarding the pulmonary artery and the aorta. The valves are responsible for a unidirectional flow of blood and also prevents the backward flow of blood during the process of circulation of blood. It is very important to note that the human heart is a myogenic organ, which means it is self-excitable. The human heart can be excited by impulse that is generated by its own structure. Basically, the human heart has a nodal tissue on the upper right atria. This nodal tissue is known as sinoatrial node or SA node. This is also known as pacemaker because of its auto excitability, and the process of generation of impulse takes place from the SA node. The SA nodes, when generates impulse, is dissipated or distributed towards the lower part of the heart, reaching the AV node. The AV node is present at the atrioventricular septa, just between the septum. AV node carries the impulse generated by SA node to the lower part of the ventricles or the lower part of the heart, or towards the lower chamber of the heart known as ventricles. The AV node carries the nerve impulse through a band of parallel fibers known as bundle of His, bifurcating into two parts, extending as Purkinje fiber in the walls of ventricle. During the process of systole and diastole, which are the rhythmic contraction and relaxation experienced during the process of pumping of blood, contraction is known as systolic pressure and the relaxation is known as the diastolic pressure. Also, it is very interesting to know that the heart is of a size of a cleansed feast. The human heart is mesodermal in origin and covered by a protective layer known as pericardium. The human heart is protected by a pericardial membrane which is filled with pericardial fluid to reduce the friction and protect the heart from any injury or mechanical distress. Thank you.